Irina Didenko, lead prosecutor of the conflict-related sexual violence unit at the Office of the Prosecutor General. Masha Ifrosinina, journalist, UN Will Good Ambassador, and founder of the Masha Fund. Ingrid Elliott, expert in conflict-related sexual violence and international criminal justice. And Alina Baikova, Ukrainian model and business owner. And thank you, Madam Patton, for staying with us for this part of the panel discussion. Please join us. So just to start by saying we are a little bit behind on time, so we'll do our best to use the time we have left with our best ability. Irina, I would like to start the second part of this panel discussion with you. The unit that you lead at the Office of the Prosecutor General, which became operational 6 months ago, focuses on conflict-related sexual violence. What can you tell us about the current investigations, the challenges you are facing, and what you are undertaking to address these challenges? Thank you.
Дякую, колегам.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I would like to say several messages. We are talking about our investigations, and this is 171 case that we are investigating. We have already identified 10 suspects, and we have one judgment of one of our national courts. What does this figure tell us? Only one thing. It's the wrong figure. It's too few cases, and we have to do everything possible to inform about our standards, about our new approaches to people. And we want people to refer to us in order to get assistance, in order to be assured that the justice will be restored. I met one of our victims who miraculously managed to leave the occupied territory in Kherson region. And why I would like to tell this story right now? Because the tortures these women experienced took place on the 14th of January 2023, just more than 1 month ago. And we understand that the longer our territory is occupied, the longer these crimes are committed. They are still ongoing. It's not something that happened before, it happens now, every minute. In this room, everybody is important. We have invited here our partners, those people who assist us. The general prosecutor has set a very high standard, which we have to meet. And actually, we study every day. Our partners assist us every day. Every name means a story. For example, even here, right now, we have a person who you see on the screen, and he is ready to provide assistance to all in need. Alias, they take people to shelters, they ensure safety to people. Eurofem, our partners on the legal front who assist to all the victims. La Strada, psychologists, the hotlines, Andreev's Foundation, extremely professional psychologists who also assist, and even more. Those who are here at this panel, Ms. Pramila, your assistance is of utmost importance. We launch a super great training, and I'm really anticipating the training because we finally managed to prepare it. Miss Ingrid, who is our top lawyer, who has prepared a plan for us, and we are going to implement this plan. Miss Masha Ifrosinina, who assist us with communication with the public in order to inform the public what is going on and how one can protect himself or herself. So our conference is not about summing up our efforts. It's about the beginning of our work, which lies ahead of us. Thank you.
Many of the efforts that are being undertaken, but we also heard in the first part of the panel discussion with our previous speakers the challenge that stigma and victim blaming can pose to your work. And on that, I'd like to turn to you, Masha, because the media can play such an instrumental role in eliminating victim blaming and in encouraging survivors to come forward and engage with the justice process. And I'm curious to hear, what role do you see for the media in doing that?
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being here, Mr. President, Mrs. First Lady. I'm very thankful to the Office of General Prosecutor for this conference and for this topic. As an ambassador of UN in Ukraine, I have been working with domestic violence for many, many years. And believe me, this is the great problem in our country. But when the full-scale invasion came, I understand that what we meant about violence, it was sorry but nothing with in comparison with what we have during this big and terrific terroristic war with the victims of it. I want to start with one story. I know that we have a couple of minutes. I will be very quick. But I know that you work with a very dry language of floor. But please, forgive me these emotions. In spring 2022, I had a call from the national police. They told me, Masha, we find in Bucha, in Irpin, in Gostomel, a lot of raped women, dead women and kids, dead men with all the evidences of rapes. We know that there are much more people alive who get through that. Please make a call in your social media. Please, we need them. We need to start fix all of these sexual crimes, war crimes. I opened my Instagram and made a big speech about that, saying, please call me, please write me, please direct me, please. We are looking for, because we are ready to defend you. We are ready to support you. We are ready to give you the way of justice. And there is no mail on my box, no message in my direct. The victims of war are keeping silence. They don't want to talk for some reasons. As far as my foundation is working with the psychological help to these persons, I can say you why. They don't want to be re-traumatized. They don't want to say again and again about what they got through. Because all our system, even the system of fixing these sexual crimes, is predicting their interviews, long interviews, and very difficult and destroying them. That's why they just don't want to remember and go back to this. The second thing, unfortunately, I have to highlight this here, being the patriot of my country, struggling for my country, but saying that we have a huge problem of victim blaming. And that's why I want to now to say to all the journalists sitting here and will be highlighting this topic, please, if you get some story of any victim, if you trying to tell something about what awful things our women, children, and men got through, please just don't catch something that can be very catchy for you and maybe very interesting for your audience, because this is the real trauma. These victims don't want to talk about this, even because of this reason. All the social media just telling about the cases, but they don't underline the problem that we get with this. When we stopped pressing on these women and just trying to help them psychologically, because they women, as our First Lady Olena Zelenska said, they are dead inside. So if you look at them, I work with them in practice, and everything that was told by both First Ladies, I see it in practice. When you see these persons, they are dead inside. So they're functioning, they are continuing living physically, but they don't mention their children, they forget to eat, they're crying all the times, they had such a level of depression that mostly in every case they want to end suicide. That's why we need to support them. What is support? First, we need to show them that they can trust us. Trusting is that we will not re-traumatize them again and again. We should show them that there will be justice, that there's, I don't know how to, terrorists, these awful people who made with them these awful things will be punished. There is a moment that they even don't believe that these soldiers will be punished. They don't believe that somebody will look for them. That's why they keep in silence. And we need to fix these cases. We need to show them that please come and you will be safe. So our collaboration with the Office of General Prosecutor will provide us the possibility to make a system, to make a map of doing all these things publicly for our people should understand how we can support these women, children, and men. Thank you.
Masha, thank you so much for using your voice to eliminate, to the extent possible, all attitudes towards victim blaming, but also for using caution when using the media to speak directly to victims and survivors, because it is a double-edged sword. It can play a very important role, but it can also cause a lot of harm. So we need to do it in a very careful and sensitive manner. And Ingrid, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, but I'll first ask you, given your extensive experience investigating and prosecuting conflict-related sexual violence in multiple situations around the world, what advice would you give to the division that Irina leads in building a system for investigating and prosecuting conflict-related violence in a victim-centric and holistic manner?
Thank you, Amal. I'm deeply honoured to contribute to this panel today alongside such powerful and committed advocates for survivor justice. I'm also grateful that I've had time to reflect on the question as I've been working with Irina and her amazing team since last year with the support of the UK's FCDO. So I'd like to just share a few suggested steps towards safe and effective justice for conflict-related sexual violence survivors in Ukraine. First of all, we need to recognise and build on the strengths and foundations that are already here in Ukraine. And three of particular note. I think the leadership commitment is without question. It was articulated so clearly in the first half of this session, but also throughout last night. I think also articulated very clearly is the level of support available, almost unprecedented, by many states, allies, donors, international organisations, Ukrainian CSOs, experts and practitioners. And critically, Irina and her team in the dedicated CRSV team. They have a background in working on domestic violence. They are unflaggingly dedicated, and most importantly, they are deeply committed to a survivor-centred approach. I can't emphasise how important those foundations are. They provide an exceptional starting point, and they are rarely all present at once when we try to respond to conflict-related sexual violence. So there is a very, we are far ahead when we begin. We also need a clear action plan Irina's smiling at me because we've been talking about this a lot lately. But we need to build the systems and competencies that we need as justice actors and that survivors deserve. I've been working with Irina and her team to develop this action plan based on a needs assessment. The draft includes cohesive phased approach with identified priorities. And I'm hoping that we can consult on the draft action plan following this conference. We also need to have a legislative and procedural framework which supports safe and effective investigations and prosecutions. And Pramila Patten mentioned this in the earlier session. I'm sure you're all aware there's work needed to focus substantive criminal law, evidential rules, procedures and protections on conflict-related sexual violence in the law, but also in internal police rules and prosecution rules. It will take time, and it requires us to translate that leadership commitment and support that we've seen into decisive legislative and internal action. Equally importantly, we need to institutionalise Irina's team's survivor-centred approach into standard work processes. We have to develop safe and effective work processes that are backed up with standard operating procedures, work tools, and mentoring checks along the way. This work process must be rolled out as mandatory through systematic training across the country to cover investigations and prosecutions. We can build capacity and reinforce best practice through the rollout of this system of work, supported practice and on-the-job mentoring. We must also use the leadership commitments to drive coordination, clarity of roles and mandates, and information sharing, which is critical, across all prosecution teams, including the Office of the Prosecutor General, regional and local levels. And we need to build the same with our partners in law enforcement, the NPU and SBU. We should be inclusive, collaborative and cooperative. We'll share the action plan framework with partners and supporters to build a shared, agreed vision, to coordinate support, to amplify outcomes, and to reduce duplication. There is much to be done. Many hands make light work, they say, but they also can make a right mess, as we say in Scotland. Our results will only multiply if we are coordinated and our efforts are aligned. We are, after all, here to unite for justice. We must earn the trust of survivors through survivor-centred actions, positive, empowering experiences for each survivor, and through survivor engagement, survivor consultation, survivor feedback on our work, and informed survivor decision-making. It's also imperative to protect survivors, as we've heard, from re-traumatisation and re-victimisation in the justice process. We must also protect the brave Ukrainian investigators and prosecutors and staff from vicarious trauma, burnout, and the hazards of conflict that they face every day in their work. For example, prosecutors must have protected legal status during their field work, and so their families will be taken care of if the worst should happen. And lastly, we must proactively tackle stigma, including the misunderstandings, misassumptions about conflict-related sexual violence and its survivors. We must do this within the justice system, and we must do this in terms of the attitudes held by justice actors. And more than that, the justice actors can contribute to dispelling stigma outside the justice system by leadership and by the public educative value of the communications and the work that we do. I hope this provides some food for thought about the steps and the road ahead. But I am very optimistic that from the place that we're starting, we will get there and get there in an extremely effective and safe way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. It is indeed much food for thought. But what jumps to mind immediately is that many of these objectives will require long-term planning, support, and assistance. And in that, I would like to turn to you, Alina. You have been using your public image and voice to to call for solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. And what message would you like to send to the international community from from this conference, to ensure that the support and assistance that we are witnessing today is sustained for the very long term?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone who comes here today, especially foreign people that support us and stand with Ukraine. My goal is to spread as much information as possible to the world. And I speak up a lot, and literally to the point that I'm so worried about my life myself now. Sexual violence, it's a big problem because a lot of people don't understand what women actually, like if you think about that you being raped, you discussed, all the emotions you're going through, and then, like, as people said, you just want to die at some point, you know? But to find, I'm sorry, like, to find the person who like raped you, right? It takes forever. So in order to find them, you have to go through the investigation. You have to go through the hospital check. So you have to go to police. You have to prove that you were raped. So, and a lot of people, I would believe a lot of victims would want to give up at this point. So what our goal is, and that's why we're all today, to help them how to go through this, to help them how to you know, go to the end to find the person that raped you. And I'm sorry, I'm just like losing my thoughts.
It is an overwhelming topic.
Yeah, and so for all of this process, right, it takes a lot of time. And for this, for them, we need psychiatrists, very good psychiatrists. They're going to go through all the process with the victim, and of course, fundings. And that's very important. And I think we have to spread information about everything that is happening here, and also spread the information how to donate to correct charities, where the fund is going to go to help victims that were with sexual abuse. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, no, excuse me. One more thing, it's very, very important topic. So sexual violence, I believe, also done by Russians, because they are trying to genocide Ukrainian nation. And this is one of the things that they do when they rape Ukrainian women. They don't want Ukrainian women to have more kids, or they rape, make them pregnant, and so to produce more Russian kind of people, you know? So, and I think what is very important for world leaders to finally accept the fact that Russia does genocide of Ukrainian nation. Because if they confirm that, if all the international leaders will confirm the fact that there is a genocide in Ukraine, there will be more sanctions on Russia. And the people will understand that all the countries will have to stop doing business with Russia. And that's very, very important part, because without confirming that there is genocide of Ukrainian nation, there will be no sanctions from all the countries, because a lot of countries still work with Russia. So the Russian economy keeps going, you know? And I think that's pretty much it. And then also the fact that, you know, they're stealing our kids, and also who knows what they do in Russia with our children. Because if you think about it, like by statistics, we have only, it's also very important topic, because we don't know what's going on with our kids there. By statistics, we have about 100,000 orphan kids. And when Russia saying we're helping orphan kids, they already stole by now
I mean, officially 5,000 kids only, but unofficially it's like 500,000 kids. And we have only 100,000 kids. So also we don't know what's going on with these children. Do they rape them? What they do with them? We don't really understand. So I think this is a very important topic. But I think the fact of genocide in Ukraine committed by Russia is a very important topic. Thank you.
Alina, thank you so much also for highlighting the interlinkages between crimes, because conflict-related sexual violence does not happen in isolation, and it's happening alongside other crimes, and we need to place it in context, which is also part of the holistic approach we are exploring and that the unit is also seeking to promote. And thank you also for linking this topic to sanctions and what the international community can do, not only to respond to conflict-related sexual violence, but also to deter further commission of these crimes. Because we have maybe 2 more minutes, Ingrid, I just wanted to bring you in for just 2 minutes of caution on messaging around conflict-related sexual violence by the media. And if you would like, from your experience working on stigma and the media, if there's just a word of caution that you'd like to add to this conversation, because I think it's a very important message to bring across with the presence of all the media here today.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about stigma in the justice system and victim blaming, because I know it's an issue that has been touched upon, but it's extremely important. If you pause for a moment and think what it must be like for a survivor to think about telling their story, and to think about the possibility that the person doesn't believe you, or that the person that you are trusting with your story thinks that you had something to do with it, that you were to blame. And the reaction that must be, how terrifying, the fear in survivors to actually be able to then disclose. I've worked with many survivors who have an experience like that with the media or with justice actors, and that's it. There is no more talking. There's no more disclosing. There's no access to services. There's not even access to support around them. So it's critically important that we believe survivors. And I want to share with you a study that was done in 2015 by the incredible La Strada, which is a Ukrainian NGO, and DCAF in Geneva. They found that within the justice system, 58% of justice actors or justice practitioners that were surveyed believed that the reports to the police about sexual violence were false. 58% within the justice system. We have to change this. We have to change this inflated belief that there are false reports. In reality, the highest percentages in most countries are 1%, if not lower than that in terms of false reporting to police. And the reality is that 95% or higher never report to police. Never report to police. So we have to change these attitudes that we have. We have to tackle them within the justice system, and we have to tackle them in our communities so that survivors are not afraid that they won't be believed.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. So we've now explored addressing conflict-related sexual violence holistically from different angles. And Madam Patton, you're best placed to bring all these interventions together in some concluding remarks from your side on the challenges, but also the progress made thus far.
Well, thank you. I mean, we had 4 very interesting panels last night exploring the different forms of justice and accountability initiatives. And I think this morning's panel brings to light that sexual violence, which is a very potent tool because it is used as a deliberate strategy to instill fear, to impact on the lives of not only the individual victims, but the families and the communities and the country as a whole. And that we are also talking about one of history's most silenced crime and least condemned crime. I think everyone has made the point about stigma, and I think that's where we need to support the office of the specialized unit led by Irina, because the investigation really, that's where the holistic approach is needed. Holistic approach to encourage reporting by creating that enabling environment that would include medical, specialized mental health services that the First Lady of Latvia so rightly pointed out, sexual and reproductive health, which is critical because we know that time and distance can be a death sentence for the survivors of sexual violence, for whom the emergency contraception and other treatment time is of the essence. In addition to the work on stigma that really needs to be done, we really have to focus on that survivor-centered approach. And I recall when I took office back in 2017, I said that mandate was created for the survivors and has the face of a survivor. As much as we know that women and girls are significantly impacted, we should not forget that in Ukraine, men and boys are also falling prey to sexual violence, and there are many reports of sexualized torture, including in detention. So that survivor-centered approach is critical because stigma manifests itself differently, and for men it can be even more difficult. So we really have to ensure that we have a survivor-centered approach that really understands the experience and the needs of the survivors, and that we do not treat survivors as passive beneficiaries of our work, but as co-creators of solutions. And just to say that in terms of our partnership, our collaboration with the government of Ukraine, following the framework of cooperation signed last May, we have an implementation plan which was launched during the UN General Assembly and which was endorsed by the Cabinet of Ministers in December. The work is ongoing, and that is a roadmap. The training of judges has started by other actors. We are starting the training of investigators, prosecutors, and national police. We are working on the legislative reform front, and I think since yesterday, many have highlighted the need for coordination, and that's what we are committed to do. And I just wanted to say that I met in Bosnia in 2017 a woman who told me that she just reported a few months ago, 25 years after the war. And she asked me, do you want to know why I reported 25 years later? And the government is accusing me of wanting to benefit from a pension because the government of Bosnia had just enacted a law. And I looked at her and she said, you know, my husband passed away 3 months ago. And for 25 years, I live with that burden of having been raped. If I had told my husband, I would have lost him, I would have lost my children, and I would have lost my place in that community. I would have been banished by the community. And she said, now that he's gone, I need to relieve myself of that burden. And I have encountered many similar stories in many parts of the world. We don't want the women in Ukraine and the girls of Ukraine to be in that position 25 years later. So we really have to act now. And I think the people of Ukraine deserve more than our solidarity. I think we owe them justice and reparations, because I have also received very strong lessons in the field from survivors in the DRC who told me, we got justice, but no reparations. And then everyone in the village knew that I was raped, and that's when initially I was not rejected by my husband, but after I went through the trial process in the village, everybody gathered, they heard my story about being raped. I got justice, but an order for reparation was never paid. That's when I was asked I was rejected by my husband, my family. So justice and reparations, and also the link between physical security and economic security that we have to ensure for all the survivors of sexual violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Patton, for such an excellent concluding remarks. And on our side at the Global Rights Compliance as well. Yes, yes. On our side as well, at the Global Rights Compliance, we will continue to offer support to the Office of the Prosecutor General as well, being based here in Ukraine and working shoulder to shoulder on conflict-related sexual violence with the support of the EU funding, which I'd like to thank as well. To conclude, I'd like to read a message from Angelina Jolie, who is a champion on addressing conflict-related sexual violence, but has always, since the start of the escalation and even before, showed great solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. So I'll read the message on her behalf, which will also be made available in video form after the conference. Dear friends, the path you are on is hard. We all know the obstacles that lie between you and justice for the crimes of aggression you are suffering every day. And we know that nothing can replace the family members, friends, and fellow citizens who have been torn from you so violently. As you painstakingly lay the ground for the future prosecutions we all hope to see, please know that your efforts will help to shield not only Ukrainians, but all people living in the shadow of conflict. And please know that your friends across the world are inspired by the way you are defending each other and the principles of international law on which all our security depends. Angelina. Thank you so much for this fascinating discussion and important efforts that you are undertaking. And it is an important conversation that will carry on, of course, for the years to come, I am sure.
Thank you.
So
But we also need the voice of men.
yes, we will work on that for the
Actually,
next panel.
maybe next time some of men like
Absolutely.
because when Ukrainian women will hear that men supporting this topic and they understand this is the real tragedy for our nation and supported by the very strong man's voice, I think this will be much more easier for us to get the survivors like in communication with us for making justice. Thank
So
you.
this is an invitation for the next panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists. We are ready to continue, and little announcement due to our microphone issues. Actually, everything is all right with the microphones, but you need to wait maybe for a second when you start talking, because our sound